sitting in silence before the house of the Lord. My lips moved, but no sound was heard. In the bitterness of soul I wept before you. You remember the sorrow of your servant. The day has come to give this child to you. I entrust this precious life into your hands. Let this life remain before you all his days. Speak, O Lord, for your servant is listening. Before the lamp of God had gone out, your gentle voice calls out in the night, awakening a soul that longs for you. Beside the priest whose eyes had grown dim, you called a name in the quiet of night. The word of judgment was given in silence. Faithful lips spoke all that you said. As the child grew, the Lord was with him. Not a single word fell to the ground. The Lord revealed himself again in Shiloh. His word began to flow once more. Speak, O Lord, for your servant is listening. Before the lamp of God had gone out, your gentle voice calls out in the night, awakening a soul that longs for you. A dawn that rose from the deepest sorrow, a life surrendered in quiet obedience. Before the lamp goes out, you still call.
The battle cry echoed at Ebenezer. Light of Israel flickered in enemy hands. The holy ark drifted through the storm of war. Two shadows faded on the crimson field. The old priest bowed under heavy news. Ichabod, the glory has slipped away. A shadow draped over the land of promise. Hearts were heavy with fear and despair. The Lord remains holy amid captivity. Dagon crumbled before the ark of light. No hand can harm his mighty whisper, 20 winters passed in Kiriath Jearim. The people longed and sought the Lord. Cast away your idols and hollow gods. Prepare your hearts to shine on Him alone. Gather at Mizpeh to pour out your hearts. We have strayed from the living God. As smoke from sacrifice rises to heaven, the Lord thundered with His mighty voice. The Lord remains holy amid captivity. Dagon crumbled before the ark of light. No hand can halt His mighty whisper. Return to Zion along the lowing path. Set up a stone called Ebenezer. Thus far the Lord has guided us from defeat to the miracle of rest. The land finds calm beneath His shadow.
The elders' ears caught a restless roar. We crave a master to walk before us. The heavenly shepherd wept in the wind. A golden yoke was chosen over grace. Following the tracks of the wandering beast, a stranger met the seer at the high place. The flask of oil shimmered in the light. A new heart formed beneath the silent stars. The sacred lights fell on the tallest one, hidden in the midst of common dust. A shout of allegiance shook the earth. Some despised and brought no gift. The chosen one rises above the crowd. The Spirit descends like a burning flame. At the morning watch they struck as one. The sword of rescue shattered the dark. Feel sway under a thundering sky. Look at the rain that falls in harvest time. Do not follow the shadows of empty idols, for the Lord will not cast away His own. The chosen shadow rises above the crowd. The Spirit descends like a burning flame. The kingdom sealed in the valley of light. Mercy still flows for the hesitant soul. Mercy still flows for the hesitant soul. The prophet kneels to pray without ceasing. Consider the greatness of all He has done. The first scepter weighs heavy on the land. Fear the truth and walk in the light.
To obey is better than sacrifice. To heed is better than the fat of rams. The Lord seeks a heart after his own. When the king began to reign, the Philistines gathered like sand on the shore. Waiting in Gilgal as the people trembled, the king reached out to offer the burnt offering. You have acted foolishly in your own way. Your kingdom shall not endure any longer. A man of faith stepped into the gap. The Lord saves not by many or by few. The Lord saved Israel on that day, a victory given by the hand of the Lord. Yet the shadow of pride began to fall. Watch your steps in the light of the King. Go and strike the enemy of old. Spare nothing of all that they have. But the king kept the best of the sheep. The voice of the Lord was not fully heard. Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings as much as obeying the voice of the Lord? Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. Arrogance is as iniquity and idolatry. The Lord has raised a king for the people. The kingdom is torn from your grasp today. For you have rejected the word of the Lord. He has rejected you from being king. The glory of Israel does not lie or change. True worship is found in obedience. Walk in the path of the King of Kings.
Fill the horn with oil for the chosen one, not the elders standing beneath the sun. The seer looked past the outward frame to find the heart that the Spirit would name. The youngest came from the silent field. To him the promise of the throne was sealed. The Spirit left the weary monarch's side. In a restless soul the shadows would hide. The shepherd played his harp of gold. A story of peace through the music was told. The evil fled from the strings' soft light, restoring the king in the dead of the night. The adversary rose from the Philistine line. a giant of Gath defying the divine, clad in iron and towering brass, mocking the ranks as the moments pass. Give me a man that we may fight. And the army trembled at his crushing might. The boy stepped forth with a sling and a stone against the power that the world had known.
Sword, but I come with the name, the Lord of hosts, who ends the shame. The storm took flight, the giant fell, a victory that the future would tell. The prince and the shepherd, their souls entwined, a sacred bond that no king could bind. But the people sang as the dancers whirled, his glory shines across the world. The monarch's heart grew cold and grim, watching the shadow that fell on him. In every step, the wisdom was near, the presence of light that cast out fear. The chosen heart, the story began, beyond the eyes and the spirit of man.
King commands his servants now to take the shepherd's life. A faithful friend warns the chosen one and saves him from the knife. He stands before his father's throne and speaks the shepherd's word. The king swears peace, but war returns, and victory fills the shepherd's hand. The shadow falls upon the throne again, and madness grips the king's command. The spear cuts through the silent dark. It flies toward where the shepherd stands. He slips away into the night and escapes through his wife's hands. The idol rests beneath the cloth and deceives the king's pursuit. The anointed runs to Ramah's hills, where the prophet stands to shelter him. The messengers arrive, but fall before the Spirit's mighty presence. A second wave is sent and falls. A third wave meets the same. The king himself comes after them and prophesies upon the ground. The servant rests beneath the Lord, while the king is left undone. The son. The king cast shame upon his son, and fury fills the room. The spear is thrown against the friend, the plan of death laid bare. The arrows fly across the field, a signal only one heart knows. They weep together in the field, then rise and walk, for all is finished. The shepherd stands before the priest with no bread and no sword in hand. The holy bread becomes his food. The giant's sword returns into his hand. The watcher sees it all in silence, standing in that holy place. The hunted one flees into the enemy's land, where the Philistines know his face. He hides behind a madman's face and slips away without his face. The shepherd hides inside the cave. The broken gather around his place. 400 men in debt and pain now gather round the chosen one. His parents find shelter in another land, escaping danger's face. The prophet calls him back to Judah, back to his appointed place. The king accuses all the priests of Nob, and judgment fills the court. The sword falls down upon the priests. The city cries no more. One priest escapes with just the ephod and brings the truth to war. The shepherd hears the cry from Keilah and rises to defend. The ephod reveals the Lord's direction, guiding where to stand. The king follows every hidden road, but God restrains his hand. A friend comes through the wilderness and strengthens what was planned. The anointed waits in the desert. The covenant will not end. The people of Ziph reveal his place, but God becomes his refuge. The Lord alone delivers him and leads him to the end.
In the cave of En-Gedi, where the shadows play, the king slipped away from his men that day. A chance for the throne in the palm of a hand. The blade cut the robe's edge as quiet as sand. The shepherd steps back as the Lord had planned. I will not touch the king chosen. In the heat of the trial, the cold heart is frozen. Father, look upon the robe within my hand. The Lord will judge between us as He planned. Tears fell down from the face of the King, confessing the promise the Lord would bring. A feast of the harvest, a voice of the fool. The pride of the owner ignores the golden rule, but a woman of wisdom steps into the storm, turning the anger to a graceful form. The voice of the Spirit calm the rising tide. Peace return to the valley where the virtues abide. The fool awoke to the cold morning light. His heart turned to stone and he died in the night. The woman of wisdom became the shepherd's bride. The hand of the Lord was opening wide. Under the moonlight in the desert of Ziph, the spear in the ground stands as a silent glyph. Let me strike once, just one blow tonight. But the shepherd held back the warrior's right. Again mercy overcomes the desire for revenge. The shepherd leaves vengeance to the Lord of light. He lifted the spear and the water jar high, a witness of mercy beneath the open sky. My life was precious in your eyes this day. He blessed the shepherd and went his way. Fear in the heart after the long flight, adrift from the promise in the darkest night, seeking a refuge in the land of the foe. The shepherd must dwell where the cold winds blow. By day he struck the enemies of Israel's God, but told Achish a different road he trod. The king trusts the servant in the shifting sand, a double life hidden in a foreign land. But the heart of the shepherd remains in the call. Though he stumbles in shadows, he will not fall.
As the end draws near, the monarch in disguise is consumed by fear, a seeker of darkness in the dead of the night, begging the dead to speak before the light.
Tomorrow the king shall be claimed by death, rejected by lords before the heat of the fray.
The shepherd returns on a desolate way.
The city in ashes, the family's gone, the weeping of soldiers from dusk until dawn. He strengthened his heart in the Lord of his youth.
He pursued and recovered all by God's truth.
On the mountains of Gilboa, the shadows descend.
The crown and the glory shatter and bend.
The archers are fierce as the battle is strong.
The glory of Israel fades with the dawn. He fell on his sword in the dust of the field. The last of his honor, the last of his shield.
The armor was carried to the temple of shame.
His body was hung on the wall of their fame.
The prince and the father lie cold on the ground. The silence of sorrow is the